Hey neighbor, want to go for a ride? Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies, recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Julian.
I'm Madeline.
And I'm Emilio. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies, those are what keep us together, talking at the end of the night. So, we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we would love to hear from you. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok for updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio we record at Sleepless Cinematic Pod.
In addition to these main episodes, we record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. While we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, forgoing sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we begin a new cycle of movies about audience interrogation with a category we call View-nanimous, where we revisit a movie the three of us have all seen before and see if our initial opinions still stand, if they've changed, or if discussing the movie will make us see things we didn't see before.
And the time has finally come for the three of us and perhaps one more person to discuss our first David Lynch film. So we will be discussing and revisiting Blue Velvet from 1986, directed by David Lynch, starring Kyle MacLachlan, Isabella Rossellini, Laura Dern, Dennis Hopper, and others.
Yes, this is a fascinating film. We'll be getting into it momentarily, and it's been hinted at already, but we do have a fourth member with us, a return guest to the podcast. You may have heard them talk with us before when we discussed the film I Saw the TV Glow, which included a centerpiece song performed by the band that our guest is a part of, Sloppy Jane. But apart from being a member of that band, they are a multi-talented musical performer in their own right, with several great albums and EPs to their name, as well as credits scoring live theater. They're a singer, violinist, composer, songwriter, and apropos to this conversation, one of the through lines of our many years of friendship is a mutual appreciation of the works of David Lynch. Lily Desmond, welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me back. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you back to get into this movie. We're going to have a great time, which is a pretty funny thing to say when you consider the movie we're talking about.
Definitely.
How have you been, Lily? How's your last year been?
Oh gosh, it's been pretty eventful since I was last on here. I've been running around doing lots of tours, playing a lot of music. Yeah, it's been great. I'm so happy to come back here again.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, we're happy to have you. It sounds like you're living a great life.
We try.
We all do. And yeah, so we're here to finally talk. It's been 60-something episodes, and we finally have made it to discussing David Lynch. And before we get into discussing this film, Blue Velvet, we should be clear it is not to be confused with some other titles that may sound similar, such as Velvet Goldmine.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The Todd Haynes film from 1998. Todd Haynes is one of the directors we've covered the most on this podcast. I just recently saw Velvet Goldmine for the first time. It's fascinating. It's an awesome movie, especially since we're all musicians. It's a great movie to watch as a music and film lover. Blue Velvet, I say, is a cinematic gold mine, but it is not to be confused with Velvet Goldmine.
I'd say that. Yeah, and while the characters in both of these films are seen in varying states of despair, this movie is not to be confused with Blue Ruin, which is Jeremy Saulnier's very depressing but quite effective film from 2013 about a somewhat ill-equipped man who exacts revenge on his parents' murder. Good movie, but get ready to feel pretty empty.
That movie is a downer.
And this movie should also not be confused with Three Colors Blue, the first installment of the Three Colors trilogy, starring Juliette Binoche.
Yeah, directed by Krzysztof Kieślowski.
I'm really glad that you pronounced the name because I was pretty sure I was going to butcher it.
Well, I just learned how to do that from hearing a bunch of other people do it over the years. So there you go. Well, while it has the same two first initials, Blue Velvet is also not to be confused with Blue Valentine.
100%.
Yeah, the Derek Cianfrance film from 2010 starring Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams as a couple on the outs. Yeah, it's that movie. I think it's a good movie. I feel like many people appreciate it in a way that I don't feel like I'm totally bought into. I feel like I need to revisit that movie. Yeah, while it does have, and it's very blue tinted when you watch it, but not to be confused with Blue Velvet.
Yeah. I'd say this is also not to be confused with Polyester. John Waters' film from 1981 featuring Divine and Tab Hunter. It's another film that is titled after a type of evocative fabric.
Yes.
And both movies are poking holes in the picture-perfect vision of suburbia.
That's a great one. Go back and check out our episode where we talk about Polyester.
Divine Intervention, yes.
Yes. And also directed by a famous weirdo of American cinema.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that this film is also not to be confused with Perfect Blue, anime film by Satoshi Kon, where women are also beautiful and victimized and hunted by perverts, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. I still need to, I've still seen only a quarter of the Satoshi Kon filmography.
Because I made them watch Tokyo Godfathers for
Thank
Christmas
you for doing that.
series last year.
It's on the record. Listeners, you can go hear us talking about Tokyo Godfathers, but yeah, Perfect Blue. I've heard that movie has a lot in common with, is it Black Swan, I want to say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also not to be confused. And which is apropos because, another color and noun. Yes.
Okay. There you go. I guess so.
No, we're not talking about any of those films. We are talking, as if it hasn't been made clear enough already, about Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet.
Whoa.
Yes.
Lower than velvet was the night.
Yeah.
I think seen by a lot of people as maybe like one of the quintessential David Lynch films in his filmography of 10 features. This is a movie with a pretty well-known premise, but just in case you're new to it, life appears to be good in Lumberton, North Carolina, until a citizen named Tom Beaumont suffers a heart attack on his front lawn. Thankfully, he survives, but remaining incapacitated, his son Jeffrey returns from college to help out at his father's hardware store while his dad recovers. Nonetheless, Jeffrey appears to lack direction until he happens upon a severed human ear in an empty field. Jeffrey collects the ear as evidence and brings it to the friendly Detective Williams, who thanks Jeffrey for his vigilance, but warns him not to go any deeper into the mystery surrounding the ear. This warning is quickly disregarded, though.
Very quickly.
When the detective's daughter, Sandy, takes an interest in the case and strikes up a friendship with Jeffrey. Working from eavesdropped details, Sandy informs Jeffrey about a mysterious local singer named Dorothy Valens, who may be involved in the case around this ear. Determined to find an answer, Jeffrey poses as an exterminator to access Dorothy's apartment and snags a key to her front door while she converses with a man in a bee-yellow jacket. After this encounter, Jeffrey and Sandy watch Dorothy perform at a local club, the Slow Club, before Jeffrey sneaks into her apartment yet again and hides in her closet, only to soon be discovered and physically embarrassed by Dorothy, but then is forced back into the closet when Dorothy receives a visit from the fearsome criminal Frank Booth.
Ooh, yes. Fearsome indeed.
And if you've seen the movie, you know that a lot more happens after that, but that feels like an appropriate place to leave it off for starters.
Yeah, totally.
I'd say so for sure. So this film is going to constitute the View-nanimous portion of our cycle. So we've all seen this movie before. Mm-hmm. I'm the one that I have a very different relationship with David Lynch than you guys, but I'm curious to know how you guys first came to this movie.
I came to this film actually through college. There was a professor of mine who actually showed us a scene from the movie in class talking about portrayal of memory and perspective.
Nice.
Since then, I've kind of lost what her point was. But
what scene did she show you?
I'm curious about that too.
Yeah, me three. But since then, that sort of eeriness of the portrayal of the interactions that some of these characters have is really like that stuck with me, and it made me watch the film on my own. And it was it's a really interesting film, and it has stuck with me for a long time.
Yeah,
and because we went to the same alma mater, Sarah Lawrence, I have to ask, who was that professor?
Kathleen Kilroy Merrick, who was unfortunately before your time. She was my freshman dawn, and then she immediately went to go teach at the University of Toronto. So
wow.
I was very sad to see her go. She was fantastic.
Wow. Yeah, I think that this story you've told is maybe the only testimonial I've heard about this professor. I actually arrived at this film around when I was a freshman in college too, but technically a little bit beforehand. In fact, this year that we're recording this, 2025, this is the 10-year anniversary of me becoming a David Lynch fan. And this is the portion of my memory where I can remember like exact dates when I saw things. So here we go.
All right.
It was like as soon as I got through my final exams in high school and was free for the summer, I just opened up Netflix and kind of never left until I had to. And in so doing, I began watching Twin Peaks.
I was like, this movie was on Netflix?
Actually, it was.
That's wild.
It was, and that was how I saw it the first time. But my introduction to David Lynch was via Twin Peaks. And after I watched what existed at the time of that series, because the return hadn't happened yet, then at the beginning of August 2015, I said to myself, well, let's get cracking with his feature films. And Blue Velvet was on Netflix at the time, and I watched it. And in spite of having seen Twin Peaks, I think, in some ways I was prepared. In some ways I really wasn't. One of the remarkable things about the Lynch filmography is that you can have seen one or a few of his films and think you kind of know what you're in for. But then when you see something that you haven't caught just yet, you're still totally thrown by it.
Yeah.
And this was one of my first experiences with that. I remember being fascinated and kind of confused after watching Blue Velvet the first time. But
that's a fair reaction.
We've had a bit of a trend on the show lately of talking about things that we didn't really get the first time, but knew we had to come back to. Mm-hmm. This kind of started when we talked a few episodes ago about The Man Who Fell to Earth, another movie like that. And I certainly felt that here. And since then, it was the first Lynch feature I saw, and it's the one I've seen the most. I've seen it 6 times now. There's something just incredibly fascinating and captivating about this movie, as grim as some of the content gets. And we'll get into that later on.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Madeline?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love admitting that a man exposed me to David Lynch in general, because that just feels like too cliche. But that's the reality, is that I wasn't really familiar with David Lynch at all before Dougie and I met. And so Dougie, showed me Twin Peaks like pretty much right after we started dating, because that was the year that the return was coming out. So he was very excited about, the upcoming return. And so we sat down. He had, the original gold box set of Twin Peaks. So we, started from the beginning and watched all the way through and watched the return. And then at some point we watched Blue Velvet. I asked him when we were rewatching this, like, when did we watch this for the first time? Like, when did I watch this for the first time with you? He couldn't remember. I can't remember. I don't have the memory that Julian does. I'd say I would assume that I watched this in 2017 or 2018, because that was around the time that Dougie and I met. I know that's around the time that I watched Twin Peaks for the first time, so it makes sense that that would also be around the time I would get to Blue Velvet. But revisiting this, that's the only time I had seen it. So this is only the second time that I've seen it in this past week. But I think that we have it on Blu-ray. And when I was going through the deleted scenes for this conversation, I'm like, I've seen these before. So I mean, I must have gotten really into it at the time, because I must have watched all these deleted scenes, because they all felt very familiar when I rewatched them.
Yeah.
Very nice. Like
Emilio, even though you say that you're maybe like,
I'm the odd one out.
The odd one out. I think you saw this movie before any of us.
I did. And I'll tell you what, I can actually tell you the month and the year that I saw this.
Okay, Julian.
This is the second movie that we're covering on this podcast that I saw as part of my Intro to Cinema Studies class that I took first semester of freshman year. So I am pretty sure that I saw this in October of 2006. I'll tell you what, I have not seen this movie since. Some scenes absolutely stick out to me, and I had no prior knowledge of the Pabst Blue Ribbon line at all. But I remember watching it and I was like, what was that? Like, completely threw me off. I kind of love that I came to that moment and that like very meme-ified thing very organically. I also remember being like, oh, this is young Dr. Sattler from Jurassic Park, because I don't think I had seen Laura Dern in anything else before that. And I remember that the ending of this movie was very memorable to me.
Yeah.
The callback to the intro, like the fire truck, the flowers. And this is the big one for me, which is the super fake looking bird.
Yeah.
With the bug in its mouth. And the artificiality of everything going back to normal, but this kind of suggestion that part of what they just went through was not going anywhere for Dorothy. And I remember liking it, but this is very much in keeping with pretty much all of my experiences with David Lynch, is that this movie felt very much like a one and done for me. I didn't feel like at the time anything was really resonating with me on it. But here we are. I saw it again.
Yeah, I mean, I could see like Blue Velvet may not have associations at the time with a lot of other movies that you were very into, because it does feel like so its own thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You talked a little bit about the bird at the end, the robin.
Yeah.
So the robins are back. I don't know if I'm going to have a chance to say this elsewhere. So I just want to say that on the special features, the cinematographer talks about how they got this bird, which is, stuffed, obviously. It's not a real bird, which is that like a school bus in Wilmington, where they're filming, hits a robin, like a robin flies into the windshield, and the bus driver like goes out, and the robin is dead. Sad, but the bus driver is like, I'm going to like take this robin to get stuffed so that we can keep it at the school.
Oh, interesting.
Like the local high school.
Right.
But I guess this kind of gets back to the film crew. And so they like use it in the meantime. So I think the implication is that after it's used in this movie, it then makes its way to the high school.
Wow. So there's a high school.
I suppose there's a high school in Wilmington, North Carolina, where you can go see this bird.
Probably the one that they shot in the film.
Yeah, maybe.
And I wonder if it's still chomping on that bug.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask a friend of mine about that, because I have a dear friend who I was roommates with at one point, who also loves Blue Velvet and grew up in Wilmington.
Oh,
cool.
wow.
So, if anybody has seen the Blue Velvet stuffed bird, it would be this person.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I'll do some investigation to get back to you guys.
And thank you. And if any of our listeners have any more intel about that,
please write us at sleeplessenigmaticpod@gmail.com.
And while we're on this topic, I mean, Emilio, you just mentioned a few minutes ago a very memorable line from the movie. Listeners, tell us, Heineken or Pabst Blue Ribbon? What do you prefer? We'll have a comment link in the episode description. We'll post it on our Instagram. There will be places for you to tell us. What kind of beer do you like?
So I don't drink. So in order to connect with people who drink, I may just start yelling their beer brand at them, like whatever they're holding in their hand.
I only began drinking alcohol in the last few years, but up until age 25, I was a stone cold straight edge too. And so I think that, whenever I was having a conversation with someone that had to do with alcohol, this was kind of my line. And there's a lot of things are wrong about Frank Booth, but I don't know if he's off the mark on that about Pabst Blue Ribbon.
I think it depends on your taste.
Yeah.
I also think it depends on what you're looking for in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think a PBR is, totally serviceable if you're just like at a dive bar trying to hit a drink minimum.
Yes.
Like, I think that is what a PBR is for.
And I just had one of these when I was on vacation last week, I had one, but it was super cold and it was very warm outside.
Okay.
And very watery beers, when they're really cold, which Frank likes, he does not like warm beer.
Yeah, no,
Let's
it makes him puke.
Yeah.
Vehemently.
Yes, exactly. So you know what? If he likes his PBRs brick cold, I can see why he has such a connection to them.
Yeah. You mentioned having to hit a drink minimum at a dive bar, which you see Frank doing in one of maybe his quietest scene in Blue Velvet. Around 6 months ago, which, to place this recording in time, that's around when David Lynch very sadly passed away in January. But about a week later, I hung out with my cousin Sylvie, who we had as a guest recently to talk about Possession.
Shout out, Sylvie.
Yes, shout out, Sylvie. But we hung out about a week after that happened, and we watched Blue Velvet together. And then during that initial scene where you see Frank sitting with the Pabst Blue Ribbon in the bar as he watches Dorothy sing, Sylvie said something about, like, oh, nice, PBR. He'd be at home in Williamsburg, something like that. And I had to use every muscle in my body not to spoil what was coming later.
I will say though on record, I'm more of a Heineken guy too. I'm more of a Jeffrey than a Frank.
I generally, I think, would order a Heineken over a PBR. But again, I think it depends on the bar. I've had like more beer aficionados that I've talked to say that like Heineken is way better if you get one in Europe. That the times that it takes after, importing it to the US US like really lowers the quality.
I'm going to tell you right now, as somebody who has had a Heineken overseas, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just like Guinness in Ireland.
A little bit. Yeah. Or like, Staropramen in the Czech Republic. Same thing. It's just the crispness.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. Listeners, you can tell us what you think too, Heineken or Pabst Blue
Yeah,
Ribbon.
where do you live and how is the Heineken where you are?
Or are you like Mr. and Mrs. Williams and are you fans of Bud?
Yeah, the king of beers.
True. Yeah, often overlooked detail. Thank you for pointing that out. But
my pleasure.
Yeah, so we've talked about our initial exposures to Blue Velvet, and I think we've got a sense of this already some, but what do we think of it now? How does it hold up for us?
Now I was kind of in a similar boat as Emilio. I saw it in like my freshman year of college and I haven't seen it since. Now it still feels like, even though it's familiar, it still like stings when all of the like very like heavy things happen.
Sure.
And admittedly, like it is dulled now because modern filmmaking has become a lot more extreme in terms of like what they show on screen.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
But there is still a heaviness. And one of the best things that David Lynch does is portray darkness.
Yeah.
And so that still comes across. And the lightness also comes across a lot. Like I was telling someone that he sort of feels like the Wes Anderson of noir. In a way.
Yeah.
No, I like that.
Yeah,
I can see that. In my limited exposure to him, I think that's a nice assessment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, some of what you're saying, Lily, is a good segue into the fact that like David Lynch is a big figure for a few of us here. Blue Velvet was not my absolute introduction, but it was early for me. And it just helped affirm my being totally hooked on his style of filmmaking. And I think that something that's true for me, maybe it's true for everyone here who shares this interest in him, is that it's hard to explain why his films fascinate me so much, but I think there is just something about, how distinct his vision is.
Yeah.
The audacity of the, not even just the surrealism, but the realism that he portrays a lot of the time, his unwillingness to abide by narrative conventions. And I think that there's just, for lack of any better terms, there's just a frequency to his films that I think no one else has. Some people come close to it, but no one else has. And I think that it's always made me want to just not necessarily get inside his head, but just experience what he has to put out there.
Yeah.
I like that. How about you, Madeline?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that my experience with this film just, it fits into my experience with Lynch more widely. I've seen every David Lynch feature film. I have not seen all of the short films. I have every one of his movies on DVD or Blu-ray, in the last 8 years that I've been a Lynch fan since, originally watching Twin Peaks. It's like my love for him and my appreciation for him has grown exponentially over time. And I think a lot of it also, when you like listen to interviews with him and like watch things behind the scenes, he just has, I think, a very, very unique view on the world. And even though so many of his films, and especially this film, are like dealing with very dark subject matter, he was such a person that I think brought a lot of like light to people's lives. Like people have spoken so kindly about working with him. And I think we'll get into later, like, this movie is so hard to watch that there were a lot of questions at the time from people like Roger Ebert, who were like, you had to have mistreated women on this set to get this kind of performance.
Yeah.
And you hear interviews with Isabella Rossellini or with Laura Dern or any other people, or specifically women that he's worked with, who have only said lovely things about him. And I think that that's kind of missing in a lot of our modern like film experience. So I think that it's like I can really, really admire his films for what they are, separate from him as a person, but I think my appreciation for him as a person just like adds to that. I think the fact that it allows people to not like turn away or shy away from these darker themes that are based on things that do happen.
Right.
And experience that in a way that just feels respectful and maybe cathartic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I just think that's beautiful.
Yeah. I think it's worth saying, talking about this movie, that one of my 6 experiences of watching it in full, the fourth one to be exact, happened at a very auspicious Lynchian occasion, which was that in 2018, he hosted his Festival of Disruption at Brooklyn Steel. That was the first time I ever went to that venue. It's an awesome venue. And this was a whole weekend in May 2018 of curated live performances. There was a lot of music there, talks, and other film screenings too. And I think the very first thing the first screening that occurred that weekend was a screening of Blue Velvet that was introduced by Kyle MacLachlan and Isabella Rossellini.
Cool.
So I saw them in person there, and there were a lot of fun stories told about their time on set. I think maybe it was Isabella Rossellini who said something to Kyle about like, yes, we got to know each other quite well.
Ha.
I'm not surprised.
But yeah, kind of in reference to some of the more explicit scenes in the movie, but
for sure.
But also something that came up actually apropos of the point you were just making, Madeline, is that Isabella Rossellini talked about feeling very comfortable on that set in spite of the content, both physically comfortable, like that apartment, in spite of what happens in it. It's a nice looking apartment.
Yeah.
Some good digs.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, how pleasant David was to work with in that, in depicting these scenes with very sensitive content, that he had a delicate touch that I think many people do not have around that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I just feel like you feel that empathy in this movie. And you feel that in a lot of his films. And I think it's the mixture of empathy with also like reckoning with dark themes that is part of why I really enjoy his films in general.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I earlier I said there's a realism to them.
Yeah.
I feel like that word it doesn't get said enough with his filmography. Worth quickly saying, too, that, just as a display of our Lynch fandom, that Madeline and I both have Lynch-themed T-shirts on right now.
Yes, and they are both also Fire Walk With Me specific T-shirts, which that is not the movie that we are covering, but mine is a screenshot, like a sketch of the We Live Inside a Dream Philip Jeffries scene, and so there is David Lynch and Kyle MacLachlan on it.
Do you mind?
Yeah.
Emilio's taking a picture.
I am.
Both of our shirts right now. But then on the backside too, there is also one of these owl symbols.
I see.
Yeah. Sorry you can't see that, Lily, but you know the image.
Yeah, and I think I've actually seen you wear it many times.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, see, you know the image, you know this specific shirt too.
And in keeping with my vibe, no matter who we're covering, no matter what movie it is, I am not dressed for the specific for the occasion.
Except for
if we ever cover Wally, you are ready.
I have something good for that. That's a good point.
Funny enough, I mean, you do have a Heathers themed T-shirt, but I think it was too cold to wear it when we covered that movie.
Definitely, and I also was not in possession of that before we had that conversation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
No. That was a birthday gift from that year.
Cool.
So,
and don't worry, Emilio, I'm also not on theme. I'm wearing a Peanuts t-shirt.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, cool. It's still a very amusing T-shirt to see.
A little bit of Americana, David Lynch.
Okay, it is on theme. Yeah.
We can
we
can make an argument for it.
Yeah.
So, Emilio, how did you feel rewatching this film?
Drum roll, please. I loved it.
Yay!
Woo! I loved it. It was really, really good. We've done almost 70 of these things at this point. This is probably in the top 3 or 4 of rewatches that I've done.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm pretty all in on this movie. I not only see why I think people really like it, why I think it resonates with a certain type of film goer, but I also feel like I might kind of be that type of film goer. I've described sometimes to people that my engagement with Lynch up to this point has been kind of like perfunctory. But I had a great time with this. It was really good. And I think the big thing for me this time was just the soundtrack.
Yeah.
I mean,
great soundtrack.
But like awesome soundtrack.
Angelo
score.
Badalamenti.
Yeah, great score.
Yeah. Who's in the movie? He's the piano player.
Yes.
And the Slow Club.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, no, I loved the Roy Orbison in Dreams and the Bobby Vinton Blue Velvet. But yeah, the score, I loved how flexible it was. Like it was very playful and tongue-in-cheek at times, but then it sounded very classically scary.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I loved, and I didn't really remember, was how this movie has that like drowning in synths, Tangerine Dream feel at times, which I think works so nicely for when it is employed. So that's where I'm at. I had a great time with this. I can't wait to keep talking about it.
Well, since you mentioned the soundtrack, two points to mention on that, which is that, well, Angelo Badalamenti, this is his first collaboration with David Lynch.
Yeah.
He was brought in actually to help Isabella Rossellini out with the vocals.
Yeah.
He was a friend, I think, of the producer of the film, Fred Caruso. But he was brought in to help out with that and then just became the composer. And he was also, Angelo Badalamenti was also the person who brought in Julie Cruz.
Yeah, because they had worked together previously.
Yes, who helped, I'm not sure if she was part of the writing, but she did perform the song that plays towards the end of the film.
Yeah.
Mystery of Love, that's where the Tangerine Dream synthy vibes come in.
Right, yeah.
And a relevant thing to mention about that song too, and I swear that this was not in my head because we're having you on, Lily, but I was just, listening to that song and I couldn't help but think of Claw Machine from I Saw the TV Glow.
Sure,
interesting.
Yeah, they're in the same key, and there's some melodic similarities. That's the key of B, by the way. I know, perfect pitch. But yeah, and it's worth saying too that in the time since we recorded that episode, that Haley Dahl, the mastermind of Sloppy Jane, she did an Oscar campaign for that song in the Lynchian manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so. I also think of this film all the time because she uses the Blue Velvet from the film as the walk-on music for whenever she comes on stage right before a show. And she also is always in Blue Velvet. Cool. Like this, it's all, it all feeds into the same thing.
Yeah. For anyone wondering what the Lynchian manner of awards campaigning is, that is sitting in some strange location in front of basically a billboard of what you're campaigning for with a cow.
Best way to do it.
Interesting.
Best way to do it, yeah. And David Lynch did that to campaign for Laura Dern in Inland Empire in 2007.
Neither of them were super successful with this method, right?
Well, in convincing the Academy, sure, but
it's
convincing the general public.
I'm not saying they shouldn't do it.
I'm just saying they have won the people's vote.
Yes. Yeah, how many other awards campaigns do we remember like that?
That's true.
And speaking of awards campaigns and Blue Velvet, that Isabella Rossellini just at the Oscars this past year, Isabella Rossellini was nominated and she wore Blue Velvet to the ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Get down.
Yeah, in remembrance of David Lynch.
Yeah, this was right after his passing. Was the award ceremony?
Right, like a month or so after.
A really nice shot of her and Laura Dern kind of together, seated.
Yeah. David Lynch only ever got an honorary Academy Award. It's better than nothing, but he was nominated for Best Director for Blue Velvet, didn't win. I think the Academy was a little afraid of that movie.
He was also nominated for Best Director, I think, for Mulholland Drive and did not win.
Same thing there.
And I think for both of these, the film itself was not nominated for Best Picture, so it's one of those where it's just the director nod.
Yeah, kind of a token nomination.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of how, the people in power respond to a lot of Lynch films, this movie was pretty mixed and by some pretty ill-received by critics and a lot of the public upon its release because its content was and still is very shocking. And the film was deemed, quote, one of the sickest films ever made by Rex Reed in the New York Post. I think John Waters maybe would have something to say about this.
I think so too.
But fine. But when I was watching this film, at least rewatching it, I don't feel this like paralyzing pit in my stomach that I do when I'm watching other shocking films, and two that come to mind are like A Clockwork Orange and Requiem for a Dream, which like literally like make me want to turn my TV off and throw it out a window.
I'm with you.
I do not feel that way about Blue Velvet personally. And I mentioned empathy with Lynch before. I think he clearly feels that towards these characters and his actors in a way that makes this film, for me, very watchable. And even the most brutal scenes of Dorothy aren't too difficult for me to stomach, even if I may have a bit of a visceral reaction and we are watching something very traumatizing. I can still process it in a way that, with other films, I don't necessarily feel that. And I'm just curious where you guys fall, each of the three of you. Like, we have the people who supposedly fainted in the movie theater and the guy who had to have his pacemaker checked. And then we have the theater goer that Pauline Kael overheard and cited in her review, who said, maybe I'm sick, but I want to see it again.
Wow, I like that.
So where do each of you fall here?
I think you pointed it out very well, Madeline, that, there's something strangely watchable about this film in spite of the depravity of some of the content in it. I think
you've watched it 6 times, so clearly you find it watchable.
Well, sure. And we were just saying that Lynch is very rewatchable, and this is not the only film of his that I've rewatched several times.
Yeah.
But even as early as the first viewing, I walked away from it registering what I had seen, but not feeling revolted by it. And I think that a lot of it has to do, there is just this balance that David Lynch finds between light and dark. I think that's very obvious watching the film, but I think that it's not just that they're both there, it's that he really renders them both in a very true way. And that, I guess I'm jumping straight ahead to the ending, but it, famously ends on this bizarrely optimistic note. Mm-hmm. And I think that the vibes of that, I think I came away from the movie thinking it's strange that this happened, but if this is here, there must be something kind of sincere about this.
Yeah. Cool. Lily,
I was going to say, I think sincerity is actually at the core of why I feel like I would want to watch this again. And also at the core of how Lynch approaches characters and story. There are movies like this that also make me want to run screaming out of the room. I fully empathize with that. And it's because the tension is almost too much to take sometimes. And it makes you or me as a viewer, it makes me kind of hypervigilant. I can't trust any of the characters until at least 45 minutes into the film, when people have been mostly sussed out. But kind of from the get-go, he literally paints a tableau. He's this is suburbia. Here's the fireman. Here's the dog. Here's the flowers. And here are the beetles under the lawn. And what's good and what's bad. And in that way, he creates sort of these limits within which to play with good and evil within a character. And that makes it so that there's an anchor, I feel for the viewer to have. That Laura Dern's character is good. You're pretty sure that the detective, Laura Dern's dad, is good. You're also pretty sure that Kyle MacLachlan character is good, although we'll talk more about that later. Good-ish,
Yeah.
But yeah, there is just a sincerity with it. And even in the portrayal of the very difficult scenes and the really horrible stuff that happens to some of the characters, it's not whiplash fast in the way that some things are. And it's not the speed that makes it jarring. It is just look at this act itself, understand what it is.
Yeah, I like it that you put it that way, Lily. Just look at this and understand what it is, because I think that's what sets it apart from something Madeline, you mentioned A Clockwork Orange, which I think has a little more of a deliberate goal of provocation.
Yeah.
Both from a directorial standpoint and from the standpoint of that main character. Mm-hmm. I think that provocation is not the word that comes to mind when watching Blue Velvet. It's more examination, to follow up on what you said, Lily.
And I think that's something that we, at least the three of us, disagree with from Roger Ebert, for example. I think so much of his criticism was what is the point of watching a person and a woman go through this? If it doesn't serve the story in a way that gives her agency. I think she has agency. I think that, Ebert viewed this movie as pure provocation. Mm-hmm. And that's not something that I feel out of this movie.
Yeah.
Where do you fall, Emilio?
Well, I'm a huge Siskel and Ebert nut, and this is one of the like totemic arguments that Siskel and Ebert had. It's almost part of any conversation of Blue Velvet and its response. To cite their conversation about it.
Their conversation is on my DVD.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I think it's a huge part of how this movie is remembered because one of them was intrigued by it and the other one was repulsed by it. I think it's actually something that David Lynch would welcome.
Yeah.
The other part of this conversation is Siskel and Ebert, they just spent the first half of the 80s having to review a ton of slasher films.
He's tired.
Yeah,
he's fed up.
Exactly.
He's mad as hell and he's not going to take it anymore.
Exactly.
Totally. Yeah, I think Ebert saw this movie as descended in some ways from a slasher film, but disguised as an art house film. I get it in some respects. I also think it speaks to when this movie came out, you hear so many people say that they had a really visceral response to the content.
My dad was on our last episode of our previous cycle, and we told him we were covering this movie next, and he said he saw this in the theater and it scared the shit out of him, which I'm like doing the math now, and I was like, my brother was 1 year old when this movie came out, so I find it so funny that my dad, as the father of an infant at the time, having limited amount of time to go see movies, was like, that one I will be seeing in the theater.
He did not get the break that he wanted, poor
Gems.
guy.
Yeah, exactly. But Emilio said for you, that was Uncut Gems. You managed to make time for that.
I squeezed it in. I don't know why. I thought that would be a good one. And it was great. And I also would just agree that I think there's a matter of factness. I think somebody mentioned a little bit earlier that it's something that really separates, at least from my understanding, Lynch's style from something like a Kubrick or an Aronofsky, to reference the films you were mentioning, Madeline.
Yeah.
Which is, I think that those movies do. Like, provocation's a good word for it. I think there's something in the style of the filmmaking that is meant to kind of jar you. Like, it's meant to be like, this content is difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't think that Lynch takes that approach at all. And I think it works. I think it makes a movie with this type of content and these type of themes go down in a way that, Clockwork Orange or Requiem for a Dream just don't. And those movies are cool and interesting on their own merit, I think, whether you like the films or not. I think there's something undeniable about them. But yeah, they're so different, and I think this movie is different in a great way.
Yeah. Julian, you have a book that you're cracking open.
Yes.
And I'm so excited to hear this passage that I think you've earmarked.
Yeah, no, this is, I think, a passage that really is going to serve as a nice culmination of everything we're saying, which is, so the book that I have cracked open is Room to Dream, which is the, not quasi, it's the memoir of David Lynch, but it's written in a very interesting bifurcated way where each chapter is half written in the third person by an authorized biographer, Christine McKenna, and the other half is written in the first person by Lynch himself. This came out in 2018, the same year as his the New York installment of his Festival of Disruption. Also, one of the two occasions when I was lucky enough to see him in person was at that festival. And the passage that I have earmarked is from very early in the book. It's early in his life, and it is the incident that inspired the scene in this film that so incensed Roger Ebert, which is towards the end when Dorothy Valens shows up on, I believe it's Sandy's lawn, just completely naked and beaten up, which is maybe to many people, I mean, Lily, you just kind of shuddered. It's maybe the most unnerving.
It was pretty unnerving, but also it was Jeffrey's lawn.
It was Jeffrey's lawn, yeah. They get in the car and go to Sandy's house afterward. But the passage is, about, because that scene is inspired by a real incident in Lynch's childhood. And, towards the end of the paragraph where he describes that, he's just saying, "My brother started to cry and she sat down on the curb. I wanted to help her, but I was young and didn't know what to do. I might have asked, 'Are you okay? What's wrong?' But she didn't say anything. She was scared and beat up, but even though she was traumatized, she was beautiful."
Listeners, you did not hear the audiobook recording from David Lynch. That was Julian doing his best Lynch.
I've had practice. Thank you. But like, I think that, a lot of the feelings, like what comes across in his films, are on display in that passage too, especially when, he says, even though she was traumatized, she was beautiful, that there is this sense that he recognizes what's going on. He knows what feelings are at play there, but he feels kind of an empathy and I guess not a sick fascination exactly, but a fascination at what he's looking at.
Yeah, I mean, it's been said that this, brought him to tears, and so much of it, clearly stuck with him. That it gives you an insight into a world that, as a child, you are not ready for.
Yeah.
And to tie this back around a little bit, you talked about how empathy is so tied to how we experience this movie, and it was Roger Ebert himself who coined the term empathy machines to talk about movies.
But the only thing I wanted to add to, when we're thinking about how Lynch's handling of this subject matter makes this movie, watchable for some or not so much for others. Pauline Kael was a reviewer that actually really, went to bat for this movie early on. And I think it's kind of been argued that this film maybe wouldn't have reached the status that it had if certain reviewers like Pauline Kael didn't go and say, like, no, actually there's a lot of good in this movie. And one of the things that she seemed to pick up on that I picked up on a lot in this watch is the humor in this movie.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some really funny scenes.
I think this is a very funny movie.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a much funnier movie than some of these other films that aim so much for provocation, and they don't want the lightness that comes with humor.
Yeah.
It gives you like a moment of release. And that's just something that really stuck out to me on this watch.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. And then even though we've talked about like some of the realism in this movie, it's filmed and produced in a way that like the violence doesn't always feel like real. Like the ADR like punching sounds, don't actually feel like you're listening to somebody get punched.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that is a benefit to the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. That there's this consciousness of kind of like a almost classical Hollywood approach in David Lynch's filmmaking here. And well, that's, going back to Angelo Badalamenti's score. I think that what sets this score apart from arguably anything else he did is like, I think Badalamenti, the trademark, is kind of what you hear in Twin Peaks, where it's, it's kind of ambient, it's very synth heavy, or it's jazzy too. But I think that, his score in Blue Velvet's a little more like a Bernard Herrmann score in a Hitchcock movie.
Yeah.
Where there's like all of these like diminished chords, there's these like tritones, dissonance, and moments where action happens on the screen and the music
is matched,
synchronized. Yeah, like especially the moment I think of right off the top of my head is when Dorothy discovers Jeffrey hiding in the closet and opens the door.
That's the one that comes to mind too for me.
Yeah, and also I mean the conclusion with Frank at the very end of the movie, similar thing there.
That closet, man.
Yeah, maybe most iconic closet in film.
Arguable, but for this conversation, I'll go with it.
Yeah.
I'm also going to say that you should have a section of most iconic closets in film.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
Make that an Instagram story.
Yeah, well, we grade guitar playing accuracy from time to time. Maybe we need to do a similar
rate our
thing.
closets.
Yeah.
Or maybe most iconic like closet creaking like thing. Because that's a trope that happens a lot. For my question is pretty broad because I guess picking up on how sort of like America received David Lynch's film, or at least American filmgoers, there is something about David Lynch that I find like incredibly American in its essence, and not even sort of like what I've been calling the American wet dream that a lot of people sort of like to portray and play with and make fun of, but sort of just like a down to earth spirit and sincerity and a frankness that I think is really refreshing and also very like tied to American storytelling and the way that America processes things and the way that Americans think. And I also know that as a storyteller, he used a lot of methods involving meditation and sort of like teasing out unconscious thoughts and using dreams. Like Laura Dern has that whole dream scene where she just describes the robins and brings in the concept of light in the world for the first time in the movie, or not the first time, but So my question is sort of like, what do you think it is about him that makes him this sort of like, in a way, a voice for America? Like, what is it that he is working through in himself, maybe? And what is he working through for all of us?
So obviously there's the setting that I think is meant to be particularly American. But I think the other thing that feels really American is what you were mentioning, this idea of, this dream, and the fact that there is like this optimism in the Sandy character. And I think that optimism is something that is, I don't know, maybe this feels kind of weird to say, but it feels kind of like an American construction to just sort of look at the world and be like, it's going to be fine. Like, we have our freedoms. Like, we're going to, things will turn out all right because there's a constitution that is protecting certain inalienable rights for us. And I think that the idea of being able to return to some kind of stasis when things go bad, that feels American to me.
Yeah. There's also the fact that this movie kind of feels like it's floating through time.
Yeah.
Like it simultaneously feels like it's meant to be modern in the time it comes out in the mid 80s, but also kind of feels like it's set in like the 1950s, which is, I think, kind of genius, and I think underlines this Americana kind of element to it.
Yeah, I like that.
And I think also to exactly what you're saying, this kind of like, a simpler time. But the fact that it's not just set in 1950, which, was not a simpler time for everybody,
right.
Just a simpler time for certain people. So I think being able to have one foot in both time periods kind of allows you to say like, oh, there's this like simplicity that we want to be able to return to, but also like being able to keep the progress that we've made, I think is part of why it works to have both.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
And David Lynch is part of this generation of filmmakers who like grew up with these, we've mentioned this on the podcast before, like particularly these Douglas Sirk melodramas.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like All That Heaven Allows or Written on the Wind, that have, to use a quote from Todd Haynes, what he called an obligatory heterosexual ending.
I thought that was what you were referencing earlier when you were talking about how this movie ends. It's very Todd Haynes, very...
Yeah.
I may not
love
have been
that
like,
term.
directly what I was saying. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a real eye-opener. But I may not have been directly what I was thinking about, but it's certainly appropriate to mention. And that, like other people of this generation are like, we've mentioned a few of them already. There's Todd Haynes, there's John Waters, not an American, but there's Pedro Almodovar. And then
big Cirque fan. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's one person actually, Madeline, who you and I saw in person a few months ago, who's also known for some very offbeat movies, which is Todd Solondz.
Yeah. That's another sicko.
Yeah. We saw him at a 20th anniversary screening of his film Palindromes. And very memorably, like, this is like, Lily, have you seen any Todd Solondz movies?
I have not had the pleasure.
Yeah. Excellent choice of words there. But it's kind of a sick pleasure. But those are movies like Welcome to the Dollhouse or Happiness, or the one that we saw, Palindromes. And someone in the audience asked if there was like a main inspiration for this film, like something he wanted to emulate. And he was like, I think it was The Sound of Music. And
nice.
It's so like,
which when you see Palindromes, you're like, what the hell is he talking about?
Well, you're like, what the hell? But also I kind of get what he's going for. Yeah.
It's just a window into his twisted mind.
Yeah. And I think that, they're like, Lynch is another member of this generation of primarily baby boomers who, saw the duality of optimism and reflections of a harsher reality that were in like some of those melodramas, but they weren't, necessarily, they didn't want to like make a satire of it. They just kind of wanted to explore it more. And so there's this other book of scholarly essays about Lynch that I brought for this conversation. It's pretty recent, published just this year, called David Lynch's American Dreamscape. It's by an author named Mike Miley. And there's a term that he uses in it that I think describes a lot of these people very well, which is sincerity in irony, that they're aware of the ironies of American existence, but they're not necessarily trying to spoof it or like untangle it. They're just more exploring it. And I think that there's some of this in maybe all of David Lynch's films, except maybe The Elephant Man, because that's set in England. But, I feel like maybe Blue Velvet displays it quite saliently. I don't want to say it's the one that does it more than any others, because I feel like that's there in Wild at Heart. It's there in The Straight Story. It's there in Mulholland Drive. It's kind of all over the place. But while I'm mentioning that book, another thing I want to mention from it that I think adds to this whole discussion is just that there's a point where the author, Mike Miley, describes Blue Velvet as basically a fairy tale. And, here's the paragraph. Blue Velvet indeed shares a family resemblance with children's texts. It is a maturation plot set in a storybook world in which a youthful, inexperienced protagonist embarks on a disturbing journey that ushers them from innocence to experience. After an accident incapacitates his father, the young hero makes a curious discovery while wandering on the outskirts of his village. This discovery introduces him to a dark and disturbing wilderness previously hidden from him that he simultaneously fears and desires. In this world, he finds himself enchanted by a woman held captive by an erratic and evil monster. This attraction draws the ire of the monster, who seeks either to destroy the young hero or seduce him to evil. The young hero resists these calls towards the dark side at first, but gradually realizes the wicked forces he confronts also reside within himself. If he wishes to conquer these dark forces, rescue the captive woman, and restore order to his town, the young hero must defeat the evil monster or be destroyed in the process.
Yeah, I like that. I love that.
Yeah, it's great. It's really good.
That sounds like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But something very elemental. Like stories like that are never going to go away.
Yeah.
They're in every culture, every civilization.
Yeah, it's classic hero's journey stuff.
Yeah. And you would know about that, Lily, because you recorded an EP about that.
I recorded an EP about the heroine's journey, which is also something. So I would need to know the hero's journey super well in order to do something different with it. But yeah.
Yes.
Julian, I've stolen your book because I was trying to figure out if I could, in our Zoom, just make it look like David Lynch is here with us. Someone could screenshot.
He's back.
Yes, he is.
I'll make a mental note.
I'm screenshotting it right now.
We are an hour and 7 minutes into this conversation. Oh my God. I love what you did. That's great.
He's
okay,
here.
cool. 1 minute and 50 seconds.
I have joined the Zoom.
Please tell us the weather, David.
You can have your book back. Yeah.
Good morning. It almost is the morning here in New York. I feel like we're ready for our comparison corner now.
Oh, I think so.
Let's go.
We've been saying a bunch of comparisons already, but just to make room for a few others. Lily, do you have any that you want to shout out?
Again, not a movie, but I feel like, and maybe David Lynch won't like me for this, and maybe this is bad to say around other Lynchians, but I feel like this is just Twin Peaks, the pilot episode, to a certain extent.
There's a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My limited experience with Twin Peaks was I've seen the first 3 episodes and I was completely seeing stuff back.
Yeah, for sure. Even when Jeffrey and Sandy are in like that diner on the corner and you get that shot of the log truck going passing in front of the diner. And I was like, he does this exact shot in Twin Peaks so many times.
The other one that got me was the final time when Jeffrey shows up at Dorothy's apartment. Just the placement of these 2 gagged, questionably dead people felt so
like the
Twin
Red Room.
Peaks.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's, you do have like a theater space in Blue Velvet, the Slow Club. And that's a trope in Lynch films too, even as early as Eraserhead, of that theater space. But of course, I think maybe arguably most famously is shown as the Red Room in Twin Peaks.
While we're talking about the theater space, did anyone else watch any of the deleted scenes?
Not this time.
No.
You guys have got to check out the deleted scenes of the other acts at the Slow Club because they are very different from Dorothy.
Wow. Oh man.
There's like this, one is just like that's a dog eating. Just like there's a dog bowl and there's a dog eating from it. And they're just watching this dog
I love this man.
For like a really long time.
I feel like he didn't get to like go all the way with that kind of stuff until arguably Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yeah, and then the other one, which goes on for quite a while, is kind of like a comedian that has like a band with him. That the band is, I think, like just a drummer and a guitarist, and the band will kind of play, and then they'll do like a bum. And then the guy will like tell a short joke.
Oh, nice.
And then you're like, dun dun, and then the band picks up again. Yeah. And also there's like a belly dancer on the other side of him. It's great.
Delightful.
Amazing.
I feel like that was picked up. Like Zach Galifianakis would do his piano stuff. Dimitri Martin would do that too.
Yeah, it feels a little between two ferns.
And Dougie was like, this would kill at an open mic in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn, I know. Specifically Brooklyn. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And the other little detail that made me think of Twin Peaks watching this is very early in the movie. It's just as Jeffrey Beaumont is walking through that field before he discovers the ear, that, he just picks up a stone and throws it. And I thought I think it's the third episode of Twin Peaks that Dale Cooper has that Tibetan method of choosing between a few choices of just like throwing stones at bottles or something like that.
I remember this. Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely does feel like, some of the first sketches of Twin Peaks are present here. I absolutely agree with that.
You mentioned the ear. And has anyone else, you've seen First Cow, Julian?
Yes, I have. The Kelly Reichardt movie.
Yeah. When he finds the ear, I think about the beginning of First Cow, just like the scene with Aaliyah Shawkat, like in modern day, just kind of walking her dog and happening upon these like skeletons or whatever. The sense of just like going about your life, going on a nice stroll, and then happening upon something that opens up like this whole other world.
Yeah, that's interesting connection. Yeah, because First Cow, I don't think it's spoiling it to say that that's not really an eerie movie.
Yeah, and and that scene is not super like consequential to the rest of the film. I think it adds a lot to the movie, but it's not important like plot wise to the movie.
I totally see what you're going for there. I like that.
Yeah. So the comparison that I want to draw here is to Body Double, which is Brian De Palma's film that came out just 2 years before the release of Blue Velvet. Brian De Palma is somebody else who we were considering highlighting at some point in the cycle because I think he really loves to play with audience expectations and the medium of film and voyeurism. Those are all things he's really interested in. This is similarly about a young man who finds himself in way over his head when he is surveilling another woman. And I was really struck by Lynch as a director. I think it's beautifully shot. Empirically, it's a really well-directed film.
Yeah.
And that's something that you also see in De Palma's stuff. Like that guy is just an absolute technical master. And his movies have this very striking look and feel to them. So both of these films they're about curiosity, they're about obsession, they're being drawn to a femme fatale of sorts. I would say in some respects a loss of innocence, confusing surveillance with sexuality, and both of them feature lead actors that seem kind of ineffectual when they first start. And I think one of the fun things about Blue Velvet is tied to what you mentioned, Julian, which is that there is a bit of a hero's journey here. And by the end of the film, I think you think of Jeffrey as a little bit more of a capable guy.
Yeah.
Not so sure if we feel that way about the lead in Body Double. But nonetheless, if you liked Blue Velvet and you haven't seen Body Double, I'd recommend it. There are some pretty strong similarities, and they're playing with a lot of the same themes.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, the directorial prowess of Brian De Palma, and I've got something similar to offer here. All right, hear me out.
I love when you say that.
Let's do it.
All right, so we've talked about some of these other directors of Lynch's generation broadly who share like that kind of Douglas Sirk influence, sincerity in irony. To be clear, Lynch is a singular talent, but there's a lot of other singular talents who you can classify under that broad umbrella too. Someone who I think is not typically considered as part of that category, but is a contemporary of Lynch's, I would personally argue, has a lot of points that make him a valid director for comparison, is Michael Mann.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
The reasons being that, every project that he takes on, he's super decisive about. Every little thing is super intentional in each movie. Aesthetically, there are definitely some similarities, a lot of bright lights and evocative nighttime scenes. There's even in like 90s and 2000s Michael Mann movies like The Insider or Collateral, there are moments that, just these kind of like eerie nighttime scenes that feel like they're scored by Angelo Badalamenti. Michael Mann films, with the exception of maybe The Keep, they're not particularly surreal, but, there is just this tone that they have. And the first person I think of to compare them to is Lynch in certain films of his. And the Michael Mann film I want to single out here is Heat.
Oh, I love Heat.
I knew it.
And
I knew it. And I know I'm going to talk about why later, because I feel like there's other things about Heat and this movie or David Lynch in general that tie to some other questions that we're going to talk about. But oh my God, I love this.
Oh, this is juicy. Okay. But yeah, so Heat, I mean, that's the first Michael Mann movie I saw where I thought it had like some of those moments that make me think of like nighttime scenes in David Lynch movies, but it's really that dichotomy between the two main characters in Heat. That is the detective Vincent Hanna, played by Al Pacino, and then the thief, I think Neil McCauley is his name, played by Robert De Niro. An interesting flip is that in Heat, it's the detective who's the amped up character and the criminal who's kind of the composed one, as opposed to in Blue Velvet, where it's the other way around between Jeffrey and Frank. But yeah, the kind of sense of cat and mouse that goes on in both films and the purpose that the characters kind of give each other. And I think particularly, without spoiling them directly, the final notes between those two characters in both films, remarkably similar.
Another movie I thought about is a movie that, for a very specific detail, another movie that comes out this same year is Little Shop of Horrors. Oh. And I thought about it because we have, kind of villainous characters in each of these movies that get high from like inhalations. So in Blue Velvet, it's amyl nitrate. And then obviously in Little Shop, it's nitrous oxide.
Yeah.
But
I like that. That's
the
good.
Steve Martin character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's a dentist and he's abusing the laughing gas.
Wow. Nice.
Speaking of which, I found out in the behind the scenes, like kind of featurettes, or maybe in the behind the scenes documentary Mysteries of Love, that Lynch originally wrote this drug that he's inhaling to be helium. Mm-hmm. And they tried it with helium a little bit, and it was Dennis Hopper that suggested they change it. And what I find very funny is that the helium, I think, did and would, change the pitch of the voice. So then the rest of this scene would be with Dennis Hopper pitched up quite a lot, which I think gives you a bit of a different read on like the baby stuff.
That's actually what I thought was happening. When I first saw the film, I thought that he was like coming from this like completely messed up place of like childhood trauma turned criminal, and was trying to like reenact it in some way.
That's, I think, still possible.
Yeah. Okay. Like trying to infantilize himself a little bit, get rid of puberty.
Yeah, I think a point that comes up a lot when people look at the process of casting this film is that part of the reason why David Lynch wanted Dennis Hopper for that role was that, yes, he's a tough guy, but there's this kind of dark romanticism to him as well.
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper had come up in the 1950s. He was in Rebel Without a Cause. And that you see it in Blue Velvet, in that scene we mentioned earlier when he's watching Dorothy sing, but also during the In Dreams sequence, the first of the two, really, that happens with Dean Stockwell's character, Ben, where you see he's like on the edge of crying, to use the name of another Roy Orbison song. Mm-hmm. And then he's just like, stop it now. Yeah. Since we're talking about Frank, all the many times I've seen this movie, I've always been fascinated by the way the characters relate to each other. Going with this sort of folktale hero's journey archetype, I mean, you can look at the Jeffrey and Frank dynamic as kind of a binary good and evil, but there are much messier and nuanced details of theirs and other characters' relationships. And I think that the quotes from the two of them that I think of the most in trying to assess how they relate to one another is that when Jeffrey meets with Sandy after his first time hiding in Dorothy's closet, he memorably asks from kind of a traumatized place, why are there people like Frank? And then by contrast, when Frank, Jeff, Dorothy, and Frank's goons are in the car after that scene with Ben singing In Dreams, before Frank beats up Jeffrey, Frank, after huffing that amyl nitrate, looks Jeffrey in the eye and says, "You're like me." So what do we think that these quotes and others reveal about the characters? And by proxy, what do you think that it kind of says about the experience of being a viewer of this film?
This is why I got so excited about you talking about Heat.
Oh?
So going back to David Lynch being somebody who uses dreams and dream language a lot in his creativity, I often look at his films as dreams. And by that, I mean, I have been taught that dreams are like when there are people in your dreams, they are not representative of the people. They are representative of something in you that is symbolized through the people. Mm-hmm. And so Frank and Jeffrey kind of maybe being two sides of the same coin, as in like two aspects of like maybe even a dark American masculinity. And in that way, Heat is also two aspects of a dark American masculinity.
Sure.
And so it's just this comparison. But Heat, I feel like, is more two different types of men. Mm-hmm. Blue Velvet can be two different types of men, but especially with the way that Jeffrey and Frank both interact with the Dorothy character, it turns into what kind of a like archetype do you become in a sexual experience? What sort of primal thing comes out? What is your essence really? And that's the thing that's called into question that freaks Jeffrey out, and that he has to reckon with. Of just like, there's one scene where he's just crying and he's like, I committed violence against somebody that I didn't want to commit violence against, even though she asked for it. And whether or not she was in her right mind when she asked for it, we don't really know. So that, I think, is one of the more interesting things about this dichotomy. And I think that Lynch is deliberately digging into that. Another thing about it also is that Kyle MacLachlan is 100% a Lynch surrogate in this film.
I'd say in most
in most things, they uncanny the way that they look, and also
but definitely in this.
The way that he has the one earring,
the little hoop earring.
I thought initially that was a callback to the ear, because the ear that they found in the field, because that is the same ear. It's both on the same side of the head. Like he has the earring in the same side that ear got cut off from. But I was afraid that he was going to get his ear cut off also, and that didn't happen when I first saw it. So
we're like, oh god.
Yeah, luckily that doesn't happen. But yeah, I like what you're saying, Lily. And I think that, like, I've always viewed, like, yes, as Jeffrey and Frank as two sides of a coin. And I think, especially when Frank says to Jeffrey, "You're like me," like the interpretation that I get from that is that there are circumstances where these two characters come from kind of the same place. And I think in a way that Frank, especially because he's like at least a generation older than Jeffrey, he kind of represents like this dark and twisted version of what Jeffrey could become if all of his impulses were to run wild, go unfettered. I feel like Frank is kind of like the golem version of Jeffrey. And, it's if Jeffrey doesn't let his better impulses take hold, or, if something about his upbringing had been different, that he maybe there's, some cautionary tale that Frank is someone who he could become. And especially when I think about like audience reflexivity in the film, I feel like there is some element of that especially in Frank saying, "You're like me," that, it's on some level telling the viewer that, like, if you could satisfy your curiosity to the maximum degree, maybe you're seeking something like this out too.
Yeah. Something I find interesting about the "you're like me" line from Frank is that Frank does not know as much about Jeffrey as we do. And all he really knows is that Jeffrey and Dorothy have some kind of relationship that clearly they're, lying about and are hiding. But he doesn't know, I would assume, about the Jeffrey sneaking into Dorothy's apartment and hiding in the closet. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to me to think of Frank's perspective of like, well, this guy, I am trying to still kind of figure him out. Like what he's about, what his origin is, what his relationship is with this woman that I love. And that is interesting to me. because I think the You're Like Me is like, oh, well, now they've kind of spent this crazy night together. So it's like he's been trying to suss him out and also intimidate him through the whole night.
Yeah. And you learn a lot about both characters, but you never get like a full exposition of who they are.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to the conclusion between those two characters, it feels almost like, especially with Jeffrey being forced back into that closet, that's the only time that Frank sees him there.
Yeah.
There's almost, I mean, you can definitely make analogies to like the womb or Plato's cave there, and that, you know, when Jeffrey is finally exposed there by Frank for a brief moment, but has, you know, that kind of like Clarice Starling, that killer instinct right when it counts, then it's almost like he's annihilating that more perverse part of himself.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that you can look at as a justification for this bizarrely happy ending that follows. But then earlier on, like when Dorothy first discovers Jeffrey inside the closet and she holds him at knife point, she asks him who he is and he says, "I'm nobody." And then, you know, the sense of self, like once he's put in the spotlight, it's almost like his sense of self disappears. The "I'm nobody" may seem like a simplistic line, but I think it's very interesting that when put on the spot that he wants to hide, and that interestingly in that scene, you know, Dorothy starts to bring Jeffrey into some kind of sexual act that never quite materializes, but she says, "Don't look at me." And then a few minutes later, when Frank comes in too, he also says more vulgarly, "Don't you fucking look at me."
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of got the like kicking the can, like kicking the dog kind of thing between how we see Frank interact with Dorothy and how we see Dorothy interact with Jeffrey in certain ways. And you know, the violence that has been inflicted upon her by Frank and possibly by other men, you know, she's looking for that same thing from Jeffrey. It's can be interpreted that that's just, you know, what she associates with love and with eroticism and with, you know, her version of intimacy. But then I think in a different way, you have the "don't look at me." It's like, well, that's how she's being treated. So then she's now, when she has this knife, when she finds Jeffrey in the closet, she's sort of in this, she
aggressor.
She has this power that has been stripped from her in her interactions with Frank and with supposedly other men. So now she's sort of in that higher place and is almost like parroting, you know, what has been said to her.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to quickly call back the Silence of the Lambs reference, and we're talking about two sides of the coin. Silence of the Lambs, also a movie that Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel split on.
Yeah.
Yep, Siskel hated that movie, and Roger Ebert loved it.
Man, I'm starting to think we can't trust these guys.
No, see, the because they disagree is why you should trust them.
That's actually a very good point.
Argument.
And until they get bought out by Disney,
which never totally happened. I'll go on record and say, at least from my understanding. Now, to speak, I think more directly to your question, maybe this is just me. Maybe because I haven't really lived with this movie too long, I'm not really giving Frank the credit that I think you guys are. I feel like he is like a wrecking ball. I think him ascribing something like this to Jeffrey is equivalent to a broken clock being right twice a day. He's a hurt person who hurts people, and people who are hurt love to assume that other people are unstable too. And I really think that that's what's happening with Frank. Now, I'd argue that the movie is maybe making this distinction more than the character. That's me. That's my read on it.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, I think it's putting us in this similar place.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think that was part of my thought with the fact that Frank doesn't actually know that much about Jeffrey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When you were saying that, I was thinking that too.
Ostensibly, he's high when he's saying that, too.
He seems to always be high, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this maybe is the greatest performance of Dennis Hopper's career. And I say that with all due respect for all the other things he's been great in. In spite of the stories about him, I am always captivated by him on screen. I feel like he was probably, you know, if you're going to make a comparison to a modern actor, he might have at a time been kind of the Shia LaBeouf of his era, but he successfully managed to come out on the other side and uncancel himself and get his act together, which Blue Velvet is kind of the beginning of.
Yeah, in the Mysteries of Love documentary on my DVD or on my Blu-ray, he says that, he had just gotten out of rehab and he, is trying to really bounce back with his career. And so he does 3 movies very back to back. It's Blue Velvet, Hoosiers, and River's Edge.
Right.
He thinks that Blue Velvet is his best performance of them. Like Hoosiers is definitely acknowledged, like it receives more accolades. But he's like, if I was going to win anything for any of these roles, I would have thought it would be for Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
Or he'd like it to be for Blue Velvet, maybe. Yeah.
And I feel like, you have Blue Velvet to thank for him getting like that role in Speed and other things like that. But then in the Lynch filmography, I feel like this is the beginning of a very consistent portrayal that he has of psychopathic men. That you see characters like Willem Dafoe's character in Wild at Heart. Willem Dafoe, who, by the way, who I think auditioned for Frank Booth.
Yeah.
Like that character, also several characters in Twin Peaks, both the original and the return. There's characters in Lost Highway as well. It's a trend, and I feel like that, even if it's not Frank exactly, that, that character comes up as part of the duality present in all of these subsequent works as well.
I also want to call back to something that you were talking about. I remember from the first time I saw this, when Jeffrey is called out, when he's discovered by Dorothy, is this guy going to see something that is going to make him feel like he can ignore what brought him to that closet to begin with? Or is he going to fall back on the real reason he's there? And I say the real reason because I actually think Holmes is kind of a pervert.
So something that really opened up Jeffrey's character for me, whether or not you can consider deleted scenes to be canon to the final film, is, I think, up for debate. But there is a deleted scene where Jeffrey, before he leaves college, is at like a party and is going down into the basement and watching a sexual assault, watching a man forcing himself on a woman. And Jeffrey is kind of hiding behind a pipe or something. And he watches for a long time before he says anything. You get like a good minute of these two people and this woman being assaulted before Jeffrey finally is like, hey, leave her alone. So that, I think, the fact that if you look at that as canon, this is not Jeffrey's first time witnessing this kind of assault.
Yeah.
And that at the very least, the first time it happened, you can see the way that Kyle MacLachlan plays it is that there's this intrigue and this like fascinated perversion in Jeffrey's eyes that he likes watching what he's seeing.
Well,
but also wants to be able to like white knight it a little bit at the very end.
Well, and the other thing I'd say is before he even gets into that closet, Sandy has that remark to him, which I think is kind of like a thesis in the movie, which is, I don't know if you're a detective or a pervert.
Yeah.
And the way he delivers his response to her is this like really awkward mix of unease and charisma, because he says, well, that's for me to know and for you to find out. But really, it's for me to find out and for you to find out later.
Yeah.
And I think that when he goes into that closet, he's thinking with his dick and not thinking like a private dick. Like he's thinking with his privates.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Good job.
2 for 2. Nice. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if you're a detective or a pervert. Dougie at this point said, oh, that's your cycle. Like that's the whole cycle.
I like that. Yes. Yeah, that could be.
Yeah.
It's not too late to change things.
It's like Jeffrey might know that about himself, but I don't think he's ready to admit it about himself.
I think that's so much of the growth here is that he's intrigued by these possibilities, but he has, I think, some guilt to it. Like he knows that this is not right. And he needs to reckon with why he's kind of feeling this way.
And then like Jeffrey has that exchange with Sandy in the diner where he's just framing it so optimistically, like there are opportunities in life or exploration, whatever he says.
That made me think so much of Dale Cooper. I was like, that scene is, I think, the Cooperiest.
Again, the pilot
Jeffrey
episode
gets.
for Twin Peaks. For
There you
Twilight
go.
Peaks?
For Twilight.
Yeah,
they're both set in Washington.
Yeah, they are. But yeah, it could be the Dale Cooper origin story, honestly. So he also says in the diner at one point, I love a mystery. And like, you're a mystery, Laura Dern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Isabella Rossellini is a mystery. But I think that intent is everything. And I think that reveals his true character versus Frank, who is an active pervert. I think that everybody has like perverse tendencies of just like morbid curiosity or just like wanting to know something. That's just like being human and having a shadow side. But learning, like you guys are saying, the sort of instrumentalness of guilt in society, like how it keeps you being kind to people as opposed to doing destructive things. Kind of going back to what you're saying, Emilio, the thing that frustrated you in the past when you first saw it, how he said, I'm nobody. That is him realizing, oh God, this is terrible. What have I done?
Yeah.
But then his intent is just like, I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to hurt you. You're a beautiful person. I'm so sorry this is happening to you. Something is happening to you. I want to help. I also like you. I fully get why he would say, I'm nobody in that moment. And
I'm sorry, but he doesn't say that he wants to help.
I'm like, that would actually help the situation.
That would help the situation, but I get it now. I'm drawn to the movie more for his choice to do that.
Yeah.
But the first time I saw it, I'm like, homie, what the fuck?
I also just think he's in such a panic.
Yeah.
But that's also the thing, is his ineffectualness kind of leads him further into the heart of the mystery. Like the fact that he says I'm nobody and sort of like plays the doormat in that situation for her to sort of sink her teeth into, in a way, draws him further in and makes him more endearing to her. And then his ineffectualness when Frank does wind up discovering him at her apartment later on and sort of just like going along with it and like getting beat up and like not doing anything, but just sort of letting the experience happen to him so he could take the information and do something with it, I think is like maybe not necessarily something he like initially planned to do, but it wound up working out for the benefit of getting to the heart of this thing that intrigued him in the first place.
Yeah.
And maybe you could tie that into the kind of American sort of Catholic guilt. This feeling that guilt is supposed to like accompany so much of what happens in life. Like that guilt is there for your thoughts.
Yeah. And I think it adds so much to Jeffrey and Sandy's characters that they're young too. And so inexperienced, and that like the way that both Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern speak too, they're just like so quiet most of the time. It makes me think a lot of Julianne Moore in Safe, not using her diaphragm at all in that role. It feels kind of like that they're like those two are doing that for much of their performances here too. To tie together a bunch of the points that have been made in the last few moments, I'm going to bring up another passage from Room to Dream. This is not written by David Lynch. This is written by the biographer, Christine McKenna. Erotic obsession is central to Blue Velvet and is one of the foundations of Lynch's work. However, taking a longer view, it's clear that the overarching theme in everything he's done is the issue of the dualities we live with and our efforts to reconcile them. Blue Velvet swings dramatically from the purity of the bluebirds and of happiness to the savagery of the psychotic Frank Booth, and the film suggests that the dualities of life aren't as clearly delineated as one might hope. Frank Booth is brutal, yet he's reduced to tears by a sentimental pop song. He tenderly strokes a scrap of blue velvet while watching Dorothy Valens sing, and the longing and agony on his face humanize him. While remaining the film's sympathetic protagonist, Jeffrey Beaumont is also a voyeur who casually steals another man's girlfriend. Dorothy Valens is a fragile, heartbroken mother who enjoys it when men hit her. The virginal Sandy harbors a vision of compassion and perfect happiness, but sneaks around behind her boyfriend's back. Nobody is all one thing.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. Is there any one detail that we want to shout out that we have to mention about this movie that we love?
I have a credit revelation, which is actually a deleted scene, which is in one of the deleted scenes before Jeffrey leaves college. You meet his college girlfriend. And I'm like, this woman looks kind of familiar. And Dougie's like, pointing at the screen, he's like, do you see who that is? And it's Megan Mullally.
What?
Wow.
And she's beautiful. I'm like, oh my God,
I
she
mean,
is so hot. And
she is a really attractive person.
Yeah.
She still is very pretty. But
yeah. But yeah, it's
All
like
right.
Megan Mullally plays
down.
Jeffrey's college girlfriend, who you also get a few scenes after he leaves of her like him calling her, because she seems like not all that interested in keeping up a relationship now that he's gone.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, Megan Mullally as the college girlfriend.
Cool. Well, I just have a small category of little detail that I can mention, which is 2 makeshift props made by David Lynch that were included in the film. One is, I always thought it was like a dream catcher, this thing you see above Jeffrey's bed when he wakes up. This little like fabric thing with a mouth on it. David Lynch, if I remember correctly from Room to Dream, he just designed that during production and decided he wanted it somewhere on set, and there it was. I've always interpreted it as a dream catcher, but I don't think he necessarily intended it as that. And then the other one is, this is maybe a little less transparent, but during the scene when Jeffrey tails Frank and his goons and hides outside of his apartment building at night, you see this shadow of an oil derrick projected onto his building. And that was not a real oil derrick. That was just a little contraption that David Lynch put together. And the projection made it look big, but it was maybe like you could fit it easily on this table that we're all sitting at now.
Yeah.
Love practical effects.
Yes, and Lynch was quite good at them.
Very cool. In terms of things that just made me feel something when I was watching this movie. So the Homeowners Association of the Deep River Apartments, which is the building that Dorothy lives in. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, man, if the elevator is out of order for that long, someone is not doing their job.
Yeah.
They need to hire a new management company. The homeowner in me is like, this building has to be majority renters, because anyone who's living there and has made an investment in that building would be hassling whoever they could to get that thing fixed.
And this building is at least 7 stories, because they say that she lives on, I believe, the 7th floor. So that is a lot of stairs.
I'm telling you. Yeah.
100%.
I've always been a little unsure if from the outside that building externally has 7 floors.
I was trying to, they only really show you the first like 5 or so with the exteriors.
Yeah.
At the very end, there's a shot with all the cops and it looks way bigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe it.
It's a little bit like time. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're in the 50s, maybe we're in the 80s. Maybe it's a 7-story building. Maybe it's a 17-story building. Who knows? I just want to mention my favorite moment of humor in this movie was the exchange that Jeffrey has with his mom and her friend Barbara at breakfast.
I think
when
that's Aunt Barbara.
Oh, Aunt Barbara. Thank you. He's like, I don't want to talk about it. And that Aunt Barbara's like, well, like randomly, she's like, in a good marriage, it's important. And he's like, if you don't stop talking, you're going to get it. I don't know why, but that cracked me up.
Funny.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Maybe that's the little bit of Frank and Jeffrey.
That's true.
You get a little more of Aunt Barbara in the deleted scenes, and I forget what he says to her that prompts her to say, someone's getting written out of my will. They have a really cute relationship in the deleted scene.
That's so
totally
great.
I also just love the entrance shot of Sandy, where she appears out of pitch black, and she's just there in that bright pink.
Oh, super cinematic.
David Lynch told Laura Dern to appear like the wind.
Yeah.
I think that's very effective.
Yeah. She understood the assignment.
Yeah.
As did the camera operators and all that stuff. It
DP
looks
Frederick
great.
Elms. Yeah, it's one of my favorite entrance shots in all film. All right.
Love it. Well, I think it's time for Unlikely Shared Universe.
Certainly is.
Sure.
Yeah. Anybody want to start?
I can start.
Go for it.
Because as tempting as it is to connect to one of the many Lynch universes that Kyle MacLachlan or Laura Dern appear in, I'm going to zag a little bit, and I'm going to talk about Jeffrey in, maybe a more normie potential universe. So Jeffrey, has to drop out of college after his father's heart attack, and it's confirmed in the deleted scenes that this is because his family will no longer be able to afford his college tuition because the medical bills are so high. So obviously he's distraught, not the least of which, you may not know, Jeffrey was on his college fencing team. And after we see the events in this film, he is determined to get his fencing career back on track. And although he's no longer on a college team, he's still eligible to participate in the upcoming Olympic trials and qualifies. In fact, Jeffrey goes on to compete in the 1988 Summer Olympics and wins 3 gold medals.
Get out of here.
Unfortunately, this success does drive a wedge between him and Sandy, and they promptly end their relationship. In order to cope with the loss of his young love, he goes on a boat trip around the world, which makes him fall in love with boating. And soon it becomes such a huge part of his life that he is often referred to as the captain. He may get married again and have a child, but nothing really lasts. So several decades later, after finally recovering from the Sandy breakup, he's ready to settle down again. He meets a young activist who he becomes enamored with and manages to woo her, despite her being about half his age. The massive wealth he's accumulated over the years could have added to this, but that's neither here nor there. She is soon motivated to lead protests against the demolition of a historical building here in New York City and meets the young architect of the skyscraper set to take its place. And unfortunately for the captain, this pair's tension turns to passion, and the captain's wife soon asks for a divorce. As heartbreaking as this is for Jeffrey, he will bounce back with yet another woman half his age. And his ex-wife's new relationship with the architect will also not go the distance. So he will perhaps have to tell a different story to his future children about how he met their mother.
I haven't seen much of that show, but I've seen enough to get that.
That was amazing. That was really good.
Thank you.
Fun fact, the reason why I actually know that is because of some mutual friends of mine and Lily's, people we both went to college with. That's Levi and Tracy, who I routinely watched Twin Peaks with in what was their senior, my junior year. And they showed me a few episodes of How I Met Your Mother, which were apropos because of Kyle MacLachlan.
Mm-hmm. He's really funny in that.
Yeah.
He's generally a good presence in movies. Yeah.
Who wants to go next?
I got one.
Go for it.
Please.
So Dorothy is kind of reeling after this tragic incident in her middle age, especially after the wild and wondrous experiences she had as a child going to Oz. That's all. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
I can't think of anything more.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Yeah. The Wizard of Oz was David Lynch's formative movie. And, it's funny that we didn't say anything about the character being named Dorothy yet, but yeah, good call there.
Yeah, Dougie said, I will bet you that Julian is going to bring up Wizard of Oz. And which means that I win, because I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he was like, well, Lynch Oz. And I was like, maybe we'll talk about it. I don't know.
I did it for him.
I did.
Yeah, it was addressed.
Yeah, I did say something about it, but, I was beat to it. Well, I can pick this up.
Go for it.
All right, so I'm doing something a little unorthodox with this unlikely shared universe. This is not hinging on an actor, but rather a character's name. So, an aspect of this film, it's present the whole time, though we haven't said much about it, is that what Frank is doing to kind of keep Dorothy entangled with him is that he is holding her husband and young son captive to force her into a kind of sexual slavery. And so, bearing that detail in mind, at the end of the film, in spite of the trauma they have both endured, we see Dorothy Valance happily reunited with her son, Donnie. For a while, the two are able to enjoy their reunion like we see in those final moments. But after a honeymoon phase, it becomes clear that these two have not fully recovered from their psychological wounds, particularly Donnie, who has understandably developed severe abandonment issues. As Donnie becomes distrustful of his mother, who herself has not worked through the grief of losing her husband, nor processed just what all happened with Frank, it becomes clear that the two do not make a compatible pair as mother and child, and so Donnie is put into the foster care system. Also, though we've acknowledged that this film exists in kind of an ambiguous time period, let's say that the events of Blue Velvet take place around the mid-1970s. And this is when Donnie is just a young kid. Soon enough, Donnie is taken into the care of a loving family in nearby Virginia, albeit with a somewhat unfortunate surname, which Donnie still assumes with the hope of moving beyond early childhood trauma. Donnie finally gets the chance to grow up like a more normal American kid, but as he reaches his teenage years, he continues to experience a melancholy that he can't quite keep under control. Donnie doesn't feel much sense of purpose until the fall of 1988, when he begins experiencing visions of a humanoid rabbit who prophesies a soon-to-come end of the world, and then meets a girl named Gretchen, who might just be along for the ride with him during what is possibly mankind's home stretch. It's amidst these experiences that Donnie can, in his grim way, look beyond the petty torments of his peers who would chuckle at his acquired surname, Darko.
Haha.
Cool.
I think Donnie Darko is one of the few films not directed by David Lynch that genuinely earns the Lynchian label.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think that term is thrown around a little loosely, but Donnie Darko.
I would also highly recommend the film that he did before Donnie Darko, which is called Southland Tales. It is an
I've heard that's good.
I've heard that's an interesting
film.
one.
Very good. The Rock's best performance.
Isn't Justin Timberlake in that too?
And also his best performance.
Yeah.
I would put out there Pain and Gain, which is a Michael Bay film. That was my favorite Rock performance. It's kind of a weird, uneven movie, but The Rock is like the best part of it.
He's the Rock of it.
He is the Rock of it. Absolutely. All right, I'll wrap things up here. When Frank descends on Dorothy's apartment to find her parting ways with Jeffrey, he is trailed by a handful of no-good doers, one of which is named Raymond, seemingly Frank's right-hand man. Frank seems a little unstable, let's say, so I'm sure he doesn't really vet his guys all that well. Raymond's actual name is Charles and is going by Raymond because his last name is actually Ray. Maybe calling himself Raymond Charles, perhaps switching them around. I don't know. Either way, Charles, aka Raymond, has found a nice convenient place in Lumberton to hide out and, unfortunately, has started to leave a trail of dead bodies. You can see how easily he attracts ladies at Ben's place, right? Well, that's been happening a lot. A side story to this whole Frank, Jeffrey, Dorothy saga is that there's been a wave of killings happening in the state of North Carolina, and Raymond is responsible. When the police descend on Frank's place and a shootout ensues, Raymond successfully evades capture, but his identity as a more insidious criminal is an outgrowth of the greater investigation that led the police there to begin with. This puts Charles, aka Raymond, on the run. Where does he go? To a place where he has criminal connections, Chicago, Illinois. He doesn't spend too much time there, unfortunately, before having to flee police again, this time on foot, only to wind up in a toy store, ready to make his final stand. In a last-ditch effort to stay alive, he attempts a voodoo ritual on a good guy doll, passing on his soul to this child's plaything. And even though he is inhabiting something rather innocent, his dark and homicidal nature cannot be repressed.
I mean, you texted us, I'm going to do Brad Dourif, and my response was, I really hope you do Chucky. So I'm thrilled.
Ding, 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 ding. Dreams do come true, Madeline.
That's why you didn't respond to that.
Yeah.
Well done. Really good.
That's true. I was trying to keep some mystery going there, but yes.
I appreciate it.
I wondered if you were going to go for like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or like Mississippi Burning.
My
first one was Mississippi Burning, that he was the son of the very, very bad cop in that movie and that couldn't help but be bad himself.
That would track.
Yeah, that would track. But I think this one's a little tighter, I think. So anyway.
Maybe if you want to go even further, maybe there's a connection to Wormtongue and Lord of the Rings.
There you go.
Yeah.
There, maybe that too.
Well,
all right.
We had a good round there.
We did it.
Yeah.
What a movie.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah, I think that, it stands to reason that, we've said so much to justify this. It remains as electrifying to watch it as the first time I saw it. I think, in the 6 times I've seen it, I always find new angles every time. It's amazing how this film just reveals so much, even when you know everything that's going to happen in theory. It was the first Lynch feature I saw. It's the first one we're covering on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Can't wait to do more.
Yeah, I find this film like oddly rewatchable, even though this is only my first time rewatching it. And I'm excited to do that again. I mean, ever since he passed, I've been like, I really want to rewatch all of Lynch's filmography. I've been rewatching through Twin Peaks. I'm about halfway through The Return now, which is my 3rd time watching The Return. And it's like so much of his filmography and televisionography is just, I think, it moves me in a very deep way. And I think there's no other filmmaker like him. Exactly.
Truly.
Yeah. I mean, it's the first Lynch movie I've seen in almost a decade. I'll say that. And I think I've grown a lot as a filmgoer since then. So I'm hoping to take in more Lynch in the coming months and years. I feel like this podcast will be a great opportunity for me to do that and see what I've been missing in his movies that I've already seen and maybe see what's been there all along that I just haven't gotten around to yet. How about you, Lily? Any last final thoughts?
I mean, I just kind of love basking in it. Like once at the end, even with the strangely optimistic turn after such really intense darkness, it is ultimately just a very good story.
Yeah.
Sweet. I love that.
We should probably say a little bit about what we're going to cover next. Yeah. So to continue with this cycle of movies about audience interrogation, the universe did something nice for us. And this is a first for us. We've covered current movies in the past, but we've never covered one as part of any curated cycle that we do. Luckily, there's a movie out right now that is very on theme for us. And that's the new feature from someone who I think is similarly, I don't know about polarizing, but an acquired taste in the vein of David Lynch, and that would be the great Ari Aster, best known for directing the films Hereditary, Midsommar, and most recently before this, Beau is Afraid.
I feel like his last couple movies have been a little polarizing.
Beau is Afraid definitely was. When I walked out of that theater, someone else in the theater was booing the screen.
And this new film of his, which is looking to be similarly polarizing that we're going to cover, is Eddington,
which you've already seen.
Yes, I got a little bit ahead. It's going to make for a fascinating discussion.
I've also seen it. It is going to make for a fascinating discussion. I'm excited for you guys to talk about
amazing.
That's awesome. Lily, thank you again for making the time to be with us.
Thank you for making the time to have me back. That's always such a pleasure. I like talking about all these things with you guys. It's great to hear your perspectives and continue to unpack more things. There's so much to unpack, especially with Lynch.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like we're barely scratching the surface on that, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But we've done a good scratch.
Lily, where can people find you and your projects?
You can find me on all streaming services under my name, Lily Desmond. Lily spelled like the flower, Lily. Desmond spelled like the character from Lost. And my Instagram is Lily Goddamn Desmond. And yeah, you can, Bandcamp especially. You can find me on Bandcamp. That's where you should really find me.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but no relation to Chester Desmond, the character from Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
Well, that's for me to know and you to find out.
Love it.
Well said.
All right. Well, in addition to this podcast, you can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can contact us via email, Heineken, or PBR. Please tell us. Write to us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. If you're on Letterboxd, you can follow me at Patroness of Cats.
And you can follow me, Julian, at Julian_Barthold. If you're listening to us for the first time, thank you for finding us. Please consider following or subscribing to us wherever you get your podcasts. If this is the 4th, 5th, or even 60th time you've listened to us, thanks so much for sticking with us. We have really grown to love doing this, and it means the world to have our budding listenership grow.
And if you haven't already, we'd ask you, return listener, please write us a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. This is one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and help our podcast take its next steps. You can also keep it grassroots. You can tell a friend to tell their neighbor or another friend about the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. That helps too.
And I still can see blue velvet through my tears.
Let's drink to fucking. Here's to your fuck. Sorry, I really wanted to throw that one in. We do not have to include it.
No, I think that's a great button.